Hey everyone, it's Jenna Melanson from Canadian Beats Media for another episode of Inside the Industry. Today I'm joined by Dave Woods from Mississauga, Ontario. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Jenna, how are you?
Good, and you?
I'm doing just great. Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so first off, care to introduce yourself a bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. My name is Dave Woods. I host Songwriter rounds at the Moonshine Cafe in Oakville, which we'll talk about. They are called Country Nights in the City. I just started a new series at the Rec Room called the Heart of Country Songwriters Showcase, which we just did one, and we got another one on the way. Might be able to drop a hint or two about that one. And I host a podcast. I've been doing it I've almost lost track, but it's this March, it'll be 14 years.
Okay.
Believe it or not. So I was one of the early podcasters, and I interview country artists. And then I do, of course, my Facebook blogging and Instagram blogging, and share stories and other stuff that way. And I write an article that appears every month in the CMA Ontario newsletter.
Yes. Okay. So you're no stranger to the music industry, both in media and booking and organizing events. So
Right.
how did you get started on all of this?
Years ago, I actually went to radio and television college, went to Centennial College, and then I worked in radio up north at a station called CFOR, which went on to become Kix 106, which is now Pure Country up in Aurelia. So I kind of got started there, and then I started my own podcast after that, interviewing, as I said, country artists exclusively or songwriters from the genre. And yeah, that was kind of my start, the radio. And before that was the love of country music. So I'm
Mhm.
somebody who loved it from an early age. I didn't discover it later on. As a kid, my dad listened to it all the time. And so I got into it and never stopped loving it. And from the radio to the podcast and then to the Oakville show, the Moonshine Cafe, which is celebrating 5 years in May.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always see it come across my Facebook and it looks fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a really cool venue. You can kind of tell by the pictures, but if you're ever there in person, you'll pick up on that. And the artists really enjoy it. And it's songwriter round, so it's three artists at a time, and two rounds of that, and doing four songs each, one after another. And they joke with each other. They jump in on each other's songs and harmonize or accompany. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So on your podcast, In the Country with Dave Woods, you speak to artists, as you said, in the country music community.
Yep.
How does someone go about getting on your podcast? Are you looking for certain criteria?
Um, I will look online just in my social media daily scrolling. And if somebody jumps out that I don't know, and which happens a lot, a new artist shows up on the
Mhm.
scene. And if I think they're really good and they got the right sound in that, which is usually the case. If they're at a certain point, their first single in that, I'll reach out to them. So through social media, I find them, and then if they reach out to me and send me a press release or then the single or songs that they've had, and then I'll make a decision. I usually interview almost anybody who reaches out, but um, yeah, the criteria is just that they're a country artist and they've got some stuff recorded professionally. That would be, I guess, the main criteria. If they don't have anything out, then I can't speak with them at that point. But if
Yeah.
they have a couple of songs, 'cause I always love to play, and I always do play a couple of songs on the show, so people can hear what the person sings like as well as talks like. Yeah,
Yeah.
comes across. Yeah,
And is it only Canadian country that you cover?
it's mostly Canadian, and I've done pretty much exclusively Canadian the last few years. But in the
Mhm.
past, I've interviewed some American artists. So, but at this point, yeah, it's pretty much with time constraints and that, I kind of have to focus. There could be some exceptions now and then, but yeah,
Mhm.
primarily it's Canadian. And it could be big artists like Gore Bamford or Michelle Wright, who's been on a bunch of times, or obviously all the new artists that we're seeing out
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Okay. And you also host the Country Nights in the City. Um, how did that come to be? And same thing, how does an artist get involved in that?
Sure. Well, it started at the Moonshine Cafe about 5 years ago. And it started out with more of an interview component, kind of like the radio show I do or the podcast. And then that part kind of backed off a bit. And I do talk with the artist beforehand and ask them about influences and that, but there's not as much talking as we had initially conceived. But that was kind of the initial idea, to take the podcast to the Moonshine. Um, that's how that came about. and it's such a great venue, is the obvious choice. And criteria wise is sort of similar. I will again scroll through social media, or it could be YouTube online, and this has happened a lot of times where I'll hear somebody that I've never heard of before, and and then in that case, they don't necessarily have to have a recording out because they're going to be performing on stage. So if I think they got a great voice and good stage presence, then I'll invite them out. So I'll reach out. So I've done that a bunch of times, and then also people will reach out to me and send me stuff, and I'll listen, and then I'll make a decision. And then of course we got our regulars, which is great. So there's so many people that are there kind of every few months, like Aaron Allen, Angelica Appleman. These are all people you know.
Yeah.
Paige Rutledge,
Mm-hmm.
Ty Bainton, Graham Scott Fleming's been there a bunch of times. Like the list goes on and on. So the good thing is I've got a lot of regulars, and I try to really spread it out with having those names like Nicole Ray and Bree Taylor, but then also bringing in new artists like Casey Nugent and Mariah Evangeline, who are both about 17 years old and just getting started.
Okay.
So yeah, it's always a mix between favorites and then new people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you've been in the media side of things for a while, your podcast and your blogging. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to artists?
Yeah, I thought about this because I hear a lot of advice from the artists themselves too. So I pick up on some of that. So I wrote down a few things. One is social media, because that is how these days and for a long time now we make an impression. So I would suggest for a newer artist to follow other artists, as I'm sure they're doing, but watch what they're doing with social media, their graphics they use, the way they announce a single release. There's always a kind of a big lead up to different things. So you kind of have, we're a week away from the new single, and maybe do a video of you talking about it. And so use the video pictures. Of course, TikTok is huge as well. I don't use that one as much, but basically use social media to get out there and promote good graphics and really professional stuff, and lead up to single releases or shows, and make good use of social media. The other thing is connections. So whether it's, and you know how important this is, coming out to a show like mine or any show, at a show like mine, you're going to connect with other writers that you're going to play with and perform with. And then, of course, there could be artists in the audience as well. So make connections that way in person, make connections online. There are artists, I mean, maybe the bigger artists might be too busy. It's hard to say, but definitely artists like Nicole Ray, for example, if another artist were to reach out to her and say, how do I go about releasing a single? I know Nicole would be happy to help. And many other artists like her would do that. So in person, reach out, online, reach out, ask a question, because the artists want to help you because they were in your shoes when they started out. The last thing is, I would say, to keep you going, because it's a slow business in a lot of cases. People put in years and years before you get to even a medium level. So you got to celebrate all the accomplishments along the way. So don't ever think of any accomplishment as too small. So whether you played your first songwriter show, celebrate that, post about it, but also just celebrate that you did it. You got up on stage, your first single. So don't wait for the big shows to happen before you are proud of yourself. Celebrate the small stuff along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So those are my 3 pieces of advice for new artists.
And is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners?
Yeah, just a shout out to all the great talented country artists out there that I know, and the ones I don't know yet. So reach out to me if you haven't yet, and you've got a single to promote, or you want to join out of one of my songwriter rounds. Please do so. We've got so much great talent in Canada, and of course where we are in Ontario. The talent is endless and amazing, and there's more and more of it all the time. And then I'll just also say that I've got, as I mentioned to you, I think before we came on the air or off the top, along with Country Nights in the City, I just started a new kind of a series. I'm going to do it about 4 or 5 times a year, every few months, at the Rec Room in Mississauga, which is a super cool venue. We did one February 5th, the first one with great performers. And we're doing another one in April. I won't give the date yet, but it's towards the end of April. And I'm going to invite everybody out. And we got another great lineup to perform. It's a really cool place.
And that's a songwriter's, again,
it is.
like the same style?
Yep, okay. Same style, just a different venue. 3 original songs, 1 cover from each artist, 6 artists in total. And this is a pretty cool place. It's totally different than the Moonshine. I love the Moonshine, and this is just different. But it's got, I guess we seated about 120 people in it. I think it can hold maybe a little more, although that seemed kind of full with chairs in it and everything. So So we're hoping to get at least 100 or 120 out next time.
Nice.
And really cool place. Yeah, it's connected with Square One. It's like built into Square One. You access it through the back, and it's got a bunch of stuff, including the venue for the music, but it's got other stuff within the rec room. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So a lot of exciting things, and I'm probably going to find some other places this year as well to host shows at. So it's a growing thing.
That's great. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate this.
You're welcome.